let's talk about primal loss. Just the title of the book,
Oh,
Primal
yeah.
Loss, is heartbreaking. No
Yes.
child should experience that. I remember hearing the story of how the book came to be. I think I heard it from T. Marie Millington's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the story is so powerful. I was driving then, and I think I parked my car on the side just to order the book in Kindle,
Mm.
because it's wanting to convince people of the evils of divorce using
Mm.
data and statistics. But there's another thing to it's another thing to hear the stories of the silenced victims of divorce, which are the children. Can
Mm.
you bring us back to the conception of the book?
Absolutely. So I'm not a child of divorce, and obviously I'm not divorced, and there was really no divorce in my family.
Mm,
So I kind of was walking around oblivious for 50 years of my life, just thinking,
mm,
divorce is bad, lip service, the
mm,
idea that we're against divorce in theory as Catholics, but not in
mm,
practice. So, but in
mm,
theory, oh gosh, yeah, I'm teaching the faith, I'm talking
mm,
about, human sexuality and morality, but
mm,
divorce was like, kind of wink.
mm,
I even actually, to my shame, I have encouraged divorces in my life, which I cannot believe
mm,
now looking back.
mm,
But I didn't know what I know. I thought that, kids are resilient, whatever.
mm,
And so I have a circle of Catholic friends, and one of them is a mom in her 40s. She has 6 kids and is happily married. And she and this
mm,
group of friends that we have, we started talking, just as friends do. And she would bring up occasionally some things that I didn't really quite understand. It was complications in her life that happened to be a result of her parents divorcing when she was a small child. So
mm,
here she is in her 40s, and occasionally she'll say things like, well, my stepmother, she doesn't even really call her that, but my
mm,
dad's wife,
mm,
um, her kids from her previous marriage, this wife of the dad,
mm,
those grandkids, for example, get preference over her
mm,
dad's grandkids, which is my friend's children,
mm,
because of course, when there's a new relationship and a new marriage, the husband will keep the wife happy. You're going to want to keep your wife happy, and then her kids get precedent over his kids. And
mm,
these family situations where she would be at different events, and just the complications involved with her mom having, I think, 2 or 3 husbands. And it was still vexing her to this day. It was still
mm,
causing pain every holiday, every Christmas, every baptism, every wedding, whatever. So many complications. And I remember thinking after a few years, she didn't bring it up a lot, but enough that
mm,
every time she'd bring it up, I'd think, gosh, I don't really know what she's talking about. That seems very complicated. And I
mm,
started to realize maybe she's carrying a burden that I'm not carrying. And so I said, Alicia, I think you need to write this down, because
mm,
people need to hear about this. This is shocking to me. And she said, oh, okay, maybe I will. And well, I didn't realize that they don't talk about it. The children of divorce do not talk about it, or
mm,
they do not spend a lot of time telling you the depth of their pain, because they are just trying to survive and hold it together, and also not hurt their parents, because that's a huge
mm,
part, is you don't want to hurt the parents you love and tell them how wounded you are. That wouldn't
mm,
be good. It's fraught with so many difficulties. But so I thought, well, she's not going to write it down. It must be too emotional for her to really dive into this, but
mm,
it's interesting. So I'm going to ask people on my social media, because I had a blog and I had a
mm,
pretty big following on Facebook. And so I threw out this question: if people would like to answer, adult children of divorce, would you like to answer some questions that I have? And I
mm,
had thought up 8 questions off the top of my head, quite literally just sitting there going,
mm,
okay, I'll write this down. Well, what do you think about when people say children are resilient? Oh, tell me what the
mm,
effects are in your life. Oh, how does it affect your marriage or your view of marriage? What would you like to say to your parents now? What would you
mm,
like society to know? How did it affect your faith? Things like that. Well, I got within like a day, and they didn't know the questions, but when
mm,
I said who wants a questionnaire, I got about close to, I'd say, well over 100. I want to say close to 200 people saying,
ooh,
I'll do it. I'll answer it. And I had told them it's going to be anonymous, because
mm,
people will not answer this question, generally speaking, if they think that people are going to get hurt, or they're going to have to. People are terrified. One lady in the book says she was literally in terror that her parents would find out that she was answering these questions and that
Wow.
she was not okay inside because of the divorce. So people were, when they knew it was anonymous, they were willing to answer the questions. And so then when I started getting these questionnaires back, and many people could not emotionally do it. They'd get the questionnaire, but they couldn't answer the 8 questions. Too much for them emotionally. And the divorce may have happened decades earlier, but they just couldn't do it. So eventually I got 70 back, and I call it an avalanche of pain. Like, I never expected what I got. Never in a million years. And the similarities of the pain and the silencing, but the similarities, knowing that these were men, they were women, they were different ages when their parents divorced. Some of them were from abusive situations of, really bad marriages. Some of them were from perfectly lovely divorces where everybody was behaving and being nice to each other. But the responses were so similar that it was shocking to me. And it was so painful for me to read it. So I can't imagine living it. And then I started to realize, no wonder the fabric of this society is so broken, so torn, because we have damaged people walking around and trying to have their own marriages and trying to raise their own children. And they are very, very wounded. So it's a hard read. That book is it's very simple to read it, but it's extremely difficult. Someone had a book club with the Primal Loss, and they said it was the most traumatic book. Everybody agreed it was the most traumatic book they ever had in their book club.
I read it. I agree. I read it.
Yeah.
If only people can read the trauma that divorce has
Yes.
done to the children. I urge the listeners to get Primal Loss. One story
Yes.
that stuck to me is the one that said that even though her husband is a saint, the fear that he might leave her and their family is always there. It doesn't go away. So that's one of the traumas that injured by people who contributed to the book. What other traumas
Yeah,
are
that
there?
part was really hard because some of the women and the men who were so traumatized, wondering when their own marriage was going to break up because they didn't know how to do a marriage, because conflict leads to permanent separation. That's what they learned. If you fight, you get divorced. So the trauma, the anxiety, the even suicidal feelings, and these were people who are married to good people, like you said, but they just didn't know what to do with all that, all those wounds that they couldn't get past from, and they're not allowed to talk about it either. So nobody's allowed to talk about it because the kids are fine. As long as the parents are happy, the kids are supposed to be happy.
That's surprising.
It's amazing what we kid ourselves, what we tell ourselves to justify what we do as adults to the children.